Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm delighted to have my good friend and a person who really needs no introduction, Doug Jones, with us today. Doug has recently served in our United States Senate and is back in Birmingham now, and I thought he would be a great guest to enlighten us on the events of the day that we're taping. As we speak, there's new impeachment proceedings being introduced in the House of Representatives. So why don't we start there, Doug?
Sure.
What's going on up there?
Well, first of all, Tom, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me again, even though, I like being in these studios, but we've still got a little bit of ways to go.
Yeah.
I think before we get back to studios. Look, right now, the United States Capitol, and when I say Capitol, I'm not just talking the building, I'm talking about Washington, D.C. has been under siege. If you look at the photographs of what's going on up there with 7 and 8 foot tall fencing with razor wire around the most sacred building in America, the symbol of democracy around the world, the United States Capitol building, it's just not only stunning, but it's also sad. I was told yesterday that my colleagues, former colleagues up there have been told that they can be reimbursed if they want to buy a bulletproof vest for the inauguration. Wow. Think about that.
Wow.
Bulletproof vest for members of the United States Congress. That is just stunning. So everyone up there is a little shell-shocked, I think, from the folks I've talked to, but they're trying to move forward. They're moving forward, I think, to try to get to the bottom of everything that happened last Wednesday. And it's going to be a slow process, though. You've got the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI conducting nationwide investigations, not just focused on Washington, D.C., but across the country. And then Congress has got to go forward. We've got a new president that's going to take office in just a few days from when this show will be aired. You've got a new president that's going to take office. The new Congress is already there. And today, as we're taping this, as we speak, the House of Representatives is moving toward impeachment. That is going to pass. There is no question. It is going to get likely every Democratic vote and a significant number of Republican votes. And then it's going to be up to the Senate to see where they move from that point on. But it is just some stunning developments. But at the same time, Tommy, no one who really followed all of this in the last couple of years should be that surprised at what happened last week. I mean, we saw time after time where the dog whistle politics was inciting violence, whether it is from, at rallies to beat up reporters or hecklers, whether it was what happened in Michigan in the state capitol just a few months ago. No one should be really surprised. And I think the lack of preparation is going to be something that's going to be talked about for years to come.
Well, there are some out there that would say there has been protest from both sides of the equation. And in this discussion, I don't think we should diminish that fact. None of them rose to the level of this one, for sure. But it appears to me that we don't really have two parties, and that what has been traditionally the Republican Party is not really together. So we have a Republican Party and a Democratic Party, and then further outside on the extremes of each of those parties, there's different groups of people who feel strongly. So some are extreme right, some are extreme left. And I believe the actions that we saw last Wednesday are those of the extreme right, and the actions of the ones we saw up in Seattle and such were the extreme left. So how do we bridge that gap? And some say bringing this impeachment proceeding will just stoke the flames and will impede President Biden's ability to get going with what he needs to be doing.
Well, what's ironic is that the people that are saying that the impeachment is just going to stoke the flames were the ones stoking the flames themselves, both last summer in opposition to the peaceful demonstrations that went on after the George Floyd death. And they also have stoked those flames following the election. No one was calling for healing after the election when Joe Biden clearly won the election. It took a few days, but there was no fraud. Initially, I gave some leeway to my Republican colleagues up there to say, look, this needs to be in the courts. There's allegations of fraud. Let's get this over. Well, that was fine. But time and time again, those things just fell flat because there was no evidence. And you had crazy lawyers like Giuliani and this other woman that, really got in the way of things. So the problem that the Congress has faced right now is that this is not about Donald Trump. This is about the future of the Congress, and it's about the future of the Constitution. It's about the future of the presidency itself. I said that a year ago when we went through this, but this is more significant. And I think that they have very little choice but to proceed. And it is going to stoke some flames. There's no question about it, but you cannot be intimidated and let that deter you from your constitutional duty.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance for sure. We're going to take a short break and come back and get into some other things. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Doug Jones. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm speaking with Doug Jones about the state of affairs in our country, primarily at the Capitol, the transition of power that's ongoing. And I asked myself a question during and leading up to the election, when tempers were getting, you could see the flames rising. Do you think that had Trump been posited against someone other than Biden, it would have been as extreme as it got? Do you think if it were another Democratic candidate that wasn't 70-something years old and a part of the Obama administration, that it would have stoked it like it did?
Yeah, I do think it would. This was Trump against just fill in the blank. If you look at the rhetoric that he's had over the last several years and the way he has stoked the flames of hate across this country, this would have been anybody. And in many ways, it could have gotten a little bit worse, because if it had not been Biden, it would likely have been a younger, more progressive candidate, which would fuel that anger even more. Now, what you wouldn't have seen, in my opinion, what you wouldn't have seen is what happened just last week. And the reason you wouldn't have seen it was because I think Joe Biden was the only candidate who could have beaten Donald Trump. I may be wrong about that, but I think that I worried as much about him winning and the next 4 years of continuing that same path of hatred and division. But I don't think we wouldn't have seen an assault on the Capitol, because I really think he would have won against any other candidate. But right now, this is Trump against just fill in the blank. And it's not Trump that is the sole problem. This has been building up for a long, long time. He has just been that catalyst. He has been the one to step out with the platform, with the Twitter bully pulpit, even before he got elected president, to really stoke it and get people fired up. I'll never forget time right after I got elected. I was in the airport one day, and I was going back to DC, and Senator Shelby was there, and I was headed over to talk to him. And two guys, clearly Make America Great Again guys, approached Shelby. I heard him say, please support the president. He's the greatest president we've ever had. Now, he'd only been in office a year and hadn't really done anything. But the fact is, one of them, I moved away. I just decided to kind of go get, something to eat. But snack. One of them saw me, got in line, and said the same thing to me. And I said, well, why do you say this? And he said, well, he speaks to us. And so there was this pent up frustration among so many people in this country that they've been left out. And there's some validity to that, that he spoke to them, whether it was legitimate or whether it was self-serving. I believe it was self-serving, but the fact is he was speaking to him and he's still speaking to him, and we should not overlook that.
And so your concerns are that we might have a repeat come Inauguration Day?
I am very concerned about that. I am very concerned about that we're going to see that in state capitals around the country. I'm concerned that we'll see something in two different ways. Number one, I'm concerned that next week in capitals like in Michigan and Georgia and others, you're going to see some serious issues and violence. And on the other hand, I'm afraid that in state capitals like in Alabama, you're going to see a protest out there, but you're going to be seeing that those crowds addressed by people like Mo Brooks or Tommy Tuberville or some other folks who want to continue this farcical dialogue that this election was stolen. And that's a dangerous path that we're on. So it's going to be an interesting week next week, this coming week, when this show is aired. It's going to be a very interesting week for sure.
Can we get past it? Do you think, as a
yeah,
member,
we can get past it. We've got past
at
the Civil
representative
War.
In the Congress? I'm talking. Can
yeah.
What's there? You've been there. Can the wounds be healed that some of them have already seemingly closed the gap?
Right.
Can we get past it and stand up again and be America that we thought we were again?
We can, but it's not going to be an easy path because so many people in the Congress of the United States these days are more concerned about their political future and holding on to their offices than really about the Constitution and the Republic. So many people, and that's a product to some extent of gerrymandering, that we see these gerrymandered districts on both the right and the left, where the Republican districts are so Republican district that these members of Congress have to appeal to a small base within their party in order to get nominated. And once they get nominated, they win. Same is true for certain Democratic congressional seats. And so the gerrymandering issue is a real problem in American politics. Can people kind of reach down and go beyond that and try to figure out how that they can talk to each other instead of at each other? Yes, there are really great folks up there in both the House and the Senate. Whether or not there's the profiles and courage up there to do it, enough of them remains to be seen.
Well, I think, to be fair, not all Republicans are standing in the street storming the Capitol. So of the number of people up there were a large number of people up there to exercise their constitutional right to protest who probably went home after that speech. But there's a small core that obviously got amped up, and we see what happened. I don't know how many people actually were leading the charge. I couldn't tell from what I saw on the television. I don't know, it's 10,000, 1,000, 2,000. I don't know if you've heard any numbers like that. I do know they're bringing in 15,000 troops.
Yeah, I have not heard the numbers, but all I can say is this, Tom. Bad things happen when good people stay silent. We saw it happen here in Alabama and across the South in the 40s, the 50s, in the 60s, because the good people of Birmingham stayed silent. Folks have to stand up and they have to speak out. If you don't do that, you are enabling people. You're enabling this violence, and you've got to stand up, not just to deny violence, but to deny the underlying root causes that have caused those people to storm that Capitol the other day.
All right. Don't go away. We'll be right back. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm speaking with Doug Jones about the condition our condition is in, as the song goes, and it's frightening for a lot of people. Doug, what's in store for you for the next little bit anyway? You've experienced a lot of things in your life. You've been a U.S. attorney, you've been a senator, you worked in the Senate under Howell Heflin, and I don't even know all the other things you've participated in. I know you've been in private practice Uh, some had hoped you would become the Attorney General. That doesn't appear to be happening at this point. I had hoped that for you. Uh, what's your plans for the future?
Tom, thanks for that. I'm not sure at this point. We're trying to assess things going forward, whether there is a spot in the administration with someone who I've known for 40 years and am so excited about him becoming president remains to be seen. I'm not one to be part of a bureaucracy, to just be part of a bureaucracy. I know if I do something, it has to be, we'd have to find something that has meaning, that is meaningful and has some purpose based on the things that I really care about changing, some of which we're talking about right now. On the other hand, I can do some of that from the private sector, whether it's with a law firm or advocacy group somehow, some way. So we're just kind of exploring options right now, taking, relaxing a little bit, just kind of enjoying back. Deer season goes on for about 2 or 3 more weeks. So I'm going to try to take advantage of that as well.
I'm an animal person.
Well, so am I. So am I.
What's fair about being 400
this is
yards
part of conservation and damage control a lot.
I know, but being 400 yards away from an animal that doesn't have a firearm doesn't seem to be parity to me.
I've never said it was a fair fight.
What about criminal justice reform? That's a matter that Biden was involved with. Some say in a way that has created part of the problem in our system. And hopefully, he's seen what has happened. Do you foresee some change in that? This is something that's near and dear to me. Our prison system in the state of Alabama is in total chaos. What do you think might happen there?
I certainly hope so. I know that it is going to be a priority of the administration and the Justice Department. Biden has made it very clear that this is going to be a priority. I think it's going to be tough, though. I mean, look, I was one to stand on the floor of the Senate last summer and talk about this in the middle of a very difficult campaign, one that we knew was going to be almost impossible to win, but talked about the need for criminal justice reform, talking about the racial disparities in our criminal justice system and the reform needed in law enforcement, which I think has only been heightened in the last 6 months since George Floyd's death. But at the same time, there are people, again, you talk about these extremes. No one really wanted to try to get together to try to figure out where we could find common ground to make meaningful reforms. It got to be a political issue. And in a divided Senate and a closely divided House, it's going to be difficult, I think, for Judge Garland and the Justice Department and the White House to move anything forward. They've got to be able to listen to law enforcement and prison officials, but at the same time, understand the community and what's going on out there. I think it can be done, but it's going to be really, really difficult, I think. And I think what's happened recently has only made matters more difficult for them, because we're seeing left and right now the infiltration in law enforcement and our military in these kind of far right groups. And that is going to be, there's going to be a lot of pushback, and that's going to be a problem.
Do you think our current Supreme Court makeup will support legislation that affects that? I know they're supposed to be non-political. And as a corollary to that question, the stacking of the court, do you see that as a reality? I don't.
No, I don't see stacking the court as a reality.
And when we say that, we're talking about increasing the number of justices.
I don't see that happening. Again, you've got to remember that in the United States Senate, it takes 60 votes to close off debate, and getting 10 Republicans to do that on a court packing plan, I think, would be almost impossible. And you're not going to get a full cadre of Democrats that would do that. There will be folks that will oppose that. So that's a different question than whether or not the Supreme Court would uphold legislation. But they're connected. Remember, if there is legislation, if legislation can get through both houses of Congress and signed by the president, it's going to be because there was some serious compromise, finding common ground. And that gives it a much better chance of surviving a Supreme Court review. because you're just not going to be able to do it. Again, it takes 60 votes. Everybody talks about the divided Senate with 50 votes and Kamala Harris breaking the tie, but it takes 60 votes to close debate. And so you got to get 60 votes. You got to get at least 10 Republicans to be on board. And if you can do that, it's a good chance of surviving with the Supreme Court, in my opinion.
You also have to have a case that comes along
that'll be easy. There's great lawyers like you out there that will find the right case.
Okay, we're going to close with that comment right there.
I thought you might like that one.
Thanks, Doug. I honestly didn't anticipate you saying that, but thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today. Your insight is tremendous. I hope you'll join us again. We'll get back together and maybe in the aftermath of next week and see where we are in a month or two. This is our Issues Birmingham. We'll see you next week.